What happens when a global icon walks onto a live television set thinking she's untouchable, only to discover that one host refuses to play by her rules? In just 38 seconds of unfiltered confrontation, everything she thought she controlled came crashing down in the most spectacular fashion ever broadcast on daytime television. The studio lights were blazing hot that morning when Meghan Markle walked onto the set of Piers Morgan's show. She carried herself with the confidence of someone who expected the red carpet treatment, someone who believed the entire world owed her something. Piers stood up to greet her, extending a handshake and a professional smile. This was supposed to be a straightforward interview, a chance for her to share her perspective. But from the moment she sat down, the temperature in that room shifted. Piers opened with what seemed like a simple question. "Thank you for joining us today. I think a lot of people are curious about your recent comments regarding the royal family. Can you walk us through what you meant when you said you felt unsupported?" Meghan leaned back in her chair, and there was something about the way she did it that felt rehearsed, calculated. "Well, Piers, I think what people need to understand is that I went through something that no one should ever have to experience. The institution failed me. They failed to protect me. And quite frankly, I think the British public needs to hear the truth about what really goes on behind those palace walls." Piers nodded, keeping his composure. "I understand that you felt hurt, but you've made some very serious allegations. You've suggested that there were concerns about your son's skin color, that you were denied mental health support. These are heavy accusations. Do you have any evidence to support these claims?" And that's when her face changed. The carefully crafted mask of victimhood slipped just slightly, and something sharper appeared underneath. "Evidence? Are you seriously asking me for evidence of my own lived experience? This is exactly the problem. This is why people like you will never understand what it's like to be in my position." "People like me," Piers repeated calmly. "What does that mean exactly?" "You're a middle-aged white man with a platform who's never had to fight for anything in his life," she said, her voice rising. "You sit here in your comfortable chair, in your comfortable studio, judging people you know nothing about. You have no idea what it's like to be scrutinized every single day, to have the entire world picking apart everything you do." The studio crew shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't going the way anyone expected. Piers maintained his professional demeanor, but his eyes had that look, that spark that anyone who knew him recognized. He wasn't going to back down. "Actually," he said, his voice steady and measured, "I've been in journalism for over 30 years. I've been criticized, attacked, and scrutinized. Quite regularly. But here's the difference between you and me. When I make a claim, when I accuse someone of something serious, I provide evidence. I don't just expect people to believe me because of who I am." Meghan's jaw tightened. "This is unbelievable. You invited me here to talk, and now you're attacking me." "I'm not attacking you," Piers responded, leaning forward slightly. "I'm asking you questions. That's what journalists do. That's what this show is about. You came here knowing that I would ask difficult questions. You can't expect to make accusations about the royal family, about an institution that millions of people respect, and not be asked to back up what you're saying." "I don't have to back up my truth to you or anyone else," she shot back, and now her voice had an edge that cut through the studio air like glass. "My truth is my truth, and if you can't accept that, then maybe you're part of the problem." Piers raised his eyebrows. "Your truth? There's no such thing as your truth and my truth. There's just the truth. Facts are facts. And if you're going to accuse people of racism, if you're going to claim that you were mistreated, then yes, you absolutely do need to provide some form of evidence. That's how the real world works." The audience was silent now, watching this exchange unfold like a car crash in slow motion. You could feel the tension building, spreading through every corner of that studio. Meghan was gripping the armrest of her chair so tightly her knuckles had turned white. "You know what your problem is?" she said, her voice shaking with barely contained anger. "Your problem is that you can't stand the fact that I have a voice. You can't stand that I'm not going to sit here and let you diminish my experience. You're threatened by powerful women who speak up." Piers actually laughed at that. A short, sharp sound. "Threatened? I've interviewed some of the most powerful women in the world. Prime ministers, presidents, activists, actresses. And you know what they all had in common? They could handle tough questions without falling apart and playing the victim card." "I am not playing the victim," Meghan snapped. But even as she said it, the irony wasn't lost on anyone watching. "I am a victim of a systematic campaign of abuse and discrimination." "Based on what?" Piers pressed. "Based on tabloid stories? Welcome to being famous. Welcome to being in the public eye. Every celebrity, every public figure deals with negative press. It's not pleasant, but it's part of the territory. You knew that when you married into the royal family. You can't claim victimhood just because people criticized you." Meghan stood up abruptly, and for a moment, everyone thought she might actually walk off the set right then and there. But she didn't. Instead, she pointed a finger at Piers, her hand trembling. "You have no right to tell me what I can and cannot claim. You have no right to invalidate my feelings, my experiences, my trauma." "I'm not invalidating your feelings," Piers said, still seated, still calm. "I'm questioning your claims. There's a difference. You can feel however you want to feel. But when you make public accusations that damage people's reputations, when you paint an entire institution as racist without providing proof, then yes, I'm going to question that. That's my job." "Your job," Meghan said with a bitter laugh, "is to tear people down. That's all you do. You sit here on your high horse and judge everyone, but you're nothing but a bully with a microphone." And there it was, the moment when the mask completely fell away. Piers stood up now too, facing her across the desk that separated them. "A bully?" he said, and his voice had an edge now. "I've given you a platform to speak. I've asked you reasonable questions. If anyone's being a bully here, it's you, trying to control the narrative, expecting everyone to just accept your version of events without question. That's not how this works." "I don't have to listen to this," Meghan said, and she turned to look at the producers off camera. "Are you going to let him talk to me like this?" The producers remained silent. They knew Piers. They knew he was doing exactly what he was supposed to do, asking the questions that needed to be asked. "Talk to you like what?" Piers continued. "Like an adult? Like someone who's accountable for the things they say? You can't have it both ways, Meghan. You can't seek out publicity, give bombshell interviews, make serious allegations, and then cry foul when someone actually challenges you on it." "I didn't come here to be challenged," she said, and the entitlement in that statement hung in the air like smoke. "I came here to share my story." "And I'm letting you share your story," Piers replied. "But I'm also doing my job as a journalist. If you just wanted to give a speech without any pushback, you should have posted a video on social media. This is a talk show. This is a conversation. That means two people talking, asking questions, pushing back when something doesn't add up." Meghan's face was flushed now, a deep red creeping up her neck. "Nothing I've said doesn't add up. You just don't want to believe it, because it doesn't fit your narrative." "My narrative?" Piers shook his head. "I don't have a narrative. I follow the facts. And the fact is, you've made explosive claims without providing any concrete evidence. You've accused the royal family of racism, but you won't name who supposedly made these comments about your son's skin color. You say you were denied mental health support, but the palace has an entire system in place for exactly that kind of thing. None of it adds up, and I'm sorry if that's uncomfortable for you to hear, but it's the truth." "Your truth," Meghan spat back, throwing his words in his face. "No, the truth," Piers corrected. "The actual truth. the kind that exists outside of anyone's feelings or perceptions. Meghan picked up her microphone and started to unclip it from her jacket. I'm done with this. I'm not going to sit here and be attacked. No one's attacking you, Piers said firmly. But if you want to leave, that's your choice. Just know that walking out in the middle of an interview because someone asked you tough questions, that doesn't make you look like the victim. It makes you look like someone who can't handle being held accountable. She froze, the microphone dangling from her hand. You could see her processing his words, see the calculation happening behind her eyes. She was weighing her options, trying to figure out which move would make her look better. But she'd already gone too far. There was no graceful way out of this. You know what? She said, her voice low and dangerous. People warned me about you. They told me you were a misogynist, that you had it out for me from the beginning. I should have listened. Misogynist? Piers repeated, and now there was real anger in his voice, the first crack in his professional facade. That's your play? When you can't win the argument, you attack the person's character? I've been called worse by better people, but I'll tell you this. I judge people based on their actions, not their gender. And right now, your actions are speaking volumes. My actions? Meghan's voice went up an octave. My actions are standing up for myself against someone who clearly has an agenda. The only agenda I have is getting to the truth, Piers shot back. And if you can't handle that, if you can't handle a real conversation where someone might actually disagree with you, then maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews at all. The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone in that studio was holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Meghan stood there, microphone in hand, her chest rising and falling with rapid breaths. She looked at Piers, then at the cameras, then back at Piers. I want to speak to your producer, she demanded, right now. Piers gestured toward the control room. Be my guest. But I can tell you right now, they're not going to tell you what you want to hear. This isn't your show. You don't get to dictate how things run here. One of the producers, a woman named Sarah, stepped onto the set, her expression carefully neutral. Is everything all right? Meghan whirled on her. No, everything is not all right. He's been hostile and aggressive this entire interview, and I want him to apologize. Sarah glanced at Piers, then back at Meghan. I've been watching the whole interview. Piers has been asking standard questions. Tough questions, certainly, but that's what we do here. That's what the audience expects. Standard questions? Meghan's voice was shrill now. He's been attacking me from the moment I sat down. With respect, Sarah said carefully. He's been challenging your claims. That's different from attacking you. Meghan looked at her with absolute disbelief, as if she couldn't comprehend that someone wasn't automatically taking her side. This is unbelievable. This entire network is a joke. Piers crossed his arms. Then feel free to leave. No one's forcing you to stay. And that was it. That was the final straw. Meghan threw the microphone down onto the chair, the sound echoing through the studio with a sharp crack. I'm done, she announced to everyone and no one. I'm done with this charade. I came here in good faith, and this is how I'm treated? This is exactly what I was talking about. This is exactly the kind of toxic environment that I've been trying to expose. You're exposing something, all right, Piers muttered, just loud enough for the microphones to pick up. Meghan spun around. What did you just say? I said you're exposing something, Piers repeated, louder this time. You're exposing the fact that you can't handle any criticism. You're exposing that you expect everyone to just accept whatever you say without question. You're exposing that when things don't go your way. When someone doesn't bow down and treat you like royalty, you throw a tantrum and storm off. Her face went from red to almost purple. How dare you? How dare you speak to me that way? How dare I? Piers stepped closer. I'm speaking to you the way I'd speak to anyone who came on this show and made the kind of claims you've made. I don't care if you're a duchess or a waitress. If you're going to accuse people of serious things, you need to be prepared to defend those accusations. I don't have to defend anything to you, Meghan said, and she was gathering her things now, her purse, her phone. You're beneath me. The studio went absolutely silent. Even the crew members who had been bustling around in the background stopped moving. Those 3 words, "You're beneath me," hung in the air like a bomb that had just detonated. Piers stared at her for a long moment. "And there it is," he said quietly. "That's what this has really been about all along, hasn't it? Not about racism, not about mental health, not about being mistreated. It's about the fact that you think you're better than everyone else. You think your title, your status, means you're above being questioned." "That's not what I meant," Meghan started, but the damage was done. Everyone had heard it. Everyone had seen the contempt on her face when she said it. "No, I think that's exactly what you meant," Piers continued. "And honestly, thank you for finally being honest. Because this whole interview, you've been playing a part, acting like the wronged victim. But underneath it all, you're just someone who's angry that the world doesn't revolve around them." Meghan grabbed her purse and slung it over her shoulder. "I'm leaving, and trust me, you haven't heard the last of this. My lawyers will be in touch." "Your lawyers," Piers said with a laugh. "Of course, can't win the argument, so threaten legal action. That's the playbook, isn't it?" She was walking toward the exit now, her heels clicking sharply against the studio floor. But Piers wasn't done. "You know what the sad part is?" he called after her. "You actually had a chance here. You had a chance to make your case, to explain your side of things to people who might have been willing to listen. But instead, you showed everyone exactly who you really are. Someone who demands respect but doesn't give it. Someone who wants sympathy but shows none to others. Someone who plays the victim while acting like they're superior to everyone around them." Meghan stopped at the door. For a second, it looked like she might turn around, might fire back one last retort. But she didn't. She just pushed through the door and disappeared, leaving behind a studio full of stunned people and a host who stood there with his arms crossed, watching her go. The cameras kept rolling. Piers turned back to face them, and you could see him taking a deep breath, composing himself. "Well," he said to the audience, both in the studio and watching at home, "I think we all just witnessed something rather extraordinary. A perfect example of what happens when someone who's used to controlling the narrative meets someone who won't let them. I invited Meghan here today to have an honest conversation, to ask the questions that I think a lot of people have been wondering about. And I think we got our answer, didn't we?" He sat back down at his desk, straightening his papers. "You can't claim to want the truth to come out and then get angry when someone asks you to provide evidence. You can't accuse an institution of terrible things and then act offended when you're asked to back up those accusations. And you certainly can't demand that everyone treat you with respect while showing contempt for the people around you." The audience was still quiet, processing what they'd just seen. "I've been doing this job for a long time," Piers continued, "and I've interviewed hundreds of people. Politicians, celebrities, criminals, heroes. And I've learned that you can tell a lot about someone by how they handle being challenged. Do they engage with the questions? Do they provide thoughtful answers? Or do they deflect, attack, and eventually run away when things get tough?" He gestured toward the door Meghan had exited through. "We all saw what just happened here. Someone came onto this show expecting to be given a platform to say whatever they wanted without any pushback. And when they realized that wasn't going to happen, when they realized they'd actually have to defend their positions, they couldn't handle it. They resorted to insults, to accusations of bullying and misogyny, and finally, when none of that worked, they walked out." Piers looked directly into the camera. "I don't apologize for asking tough questions. I don't apologize for holding people accountable for what they say. and I certainly don't apologize for refusing to treat anyone as if they're above scrutiny, regardless of their title or status. That's not bullying. That's journalism. That's what a free press is supposed to do. He paused, letting his words sink in. Now, some people will watch this and say I was too hard on her. They'll say I should have been more gentle, more understanding. And to those people, I say this: if we can't ask difficult questions of public figures who make serious accusations, if we're supposed to just accept everything they say at face value because challenging them might hurt their feelings, then we've lost something fundamental. We've lost the ability to distinguish between truth and narrative, between facts and feelings. The studio lights seemed brighter now, more focused. Piers was in his element, speaking with the conviction of someone who knew he'd done the right thing. Meghan Markle walked onto this set today, thinking she could control this interview. She thought she could make her claims, play the victim, and everyone would just nod along sympathetically. But that's not what happened. What happened is that she was asked to defend her positions, and she couldn't, or wouldn't. And rather than engage in good faith, rather than have an actual conversation, she chose to storm off. He shook his head slowly. I've been called a lot of things over the years. I've been called rude, obnoxious, aggressive. And you know what? Sometimes those criticisms are fair. I can be blunt. I don't always sugarcoat things, but I've never claimed to be anything other than what I am. I'm a journalist who asks hard questions. And if that makes me the bad guy in someone's story, so be it. The camera pulled back slightly, showing Piers at his desk, the empty chair across from him where Meghan had been sitting just minutes ago. What you witnessed here today wasn't an attack. It was an interview, a real interview, where someone is pushed to defend their claims, where they're not allowed to hide behind vague accusations and emotional appeals. And apparently, that was too much. Apparently, being asked for evidence, being challenged on inconsistencies, being treated like any other guest who comes on this show, was somehow beyond the pale. Piers leaned forward, his hands clasped together on the desk. So let me be clear about something. This show, my show, is not a safe space for people who want to make serious accusations without being questioned. It's not a platform for people to control the narrative and shut down anyone who disagrees with them. It's a place where we have real conversations, difficult conversations, conversations that sometimes get heated and uncomfortable, because that's where the truth lives, in those uncomfortable places where people have to defend their positions. He looked at the empty chair again. Meghan Markle could have stayed. She could have answered the questions. She could have provided the evidence she claims to have. She could have had a real dialogue instead of a monologue, but she chose not to. She chose to walk out, to throw insults, to play the victim one more time. And in doing so, she answered the questions more definitively than any words could have. The tension in the studio was finally starting to ease. Crew members were moving again, making small adjustments, but everyone was still focused on Piers, still hanging on every word. You know, before she left, Meghan said something interesting. She said I was beneath her, and I think that statement, more than anything else that happened here today, reveals everything you need to know. Not about me, but about her. Because when you think someone is beneath you, when you view people who question you as inferior, that tells me you're not interested in truth. You're interested in control. You're interested in maintaining a certain image, a certain narrative, and anyone who threatens that narrative becomes the enemy. Piers picked up a pen from his desk, turning it over in his hands. I don't think I'm better than anyone. I don't think my questions are more important than anyone else's. But I do think that everyone, regardless of their status or position, should be held to the same standard. If you make claims, you should be able to support them. If you accuse people of wrongdoing, you should provide evidence. And if you can't do those things, if you can't handle being questioned, then maybe you shouldn't be making those claims in the first place. The overhead lights caught the determination in his eyes. This interview will be talked about. I know that. People will analyze it, dissect it, take sides. Some will say I was right to push back. Others will say I was too harsh. And that's fine. That's the nature of public discourse. But I stand by every question I asked. I stand by my refusal to simply accept everything at face value. And I stand by my belief that no one, absolutely no one, is above being questioned. He set the pen down and looked back at the camera. Meghan Markle left this studio thinking she'd made some kind of statement, thinking she'd shown strength by walking out. But all she really showed was that she can't handle the heat. She can't handle being in a situation where she's not in complete control. She can't handle being treated like everyone else. Piers stood up from his desk, the camera following him as he walked to the edge of the set. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. If you're going to enter the public arena, if you're going to make serious accusations, if you're going to demand that people listen to your story, then you need to be prepared for scrutiny. You need to be prepared for people to question you, to challenge you, to not just accept everything you say. That's not bullying. That's accountability. And it's something we desperately need more of in this world. The final shot held on Piers, standing there in the bright studio lights, unbowed and unapologetic. Thank you for watching. And remember, the truth doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't care about your status. It just is. And my job, always, is to pursue it, no matter who that makes uncomfortable. The segment ended there, but the reverberations of what had just happened would echo far beyond that studio, far beyond that day.